Okay, good morning, everybody. It is 8 o'clock in Denver time, anyway, and we are joining together again to talk about some really important information amid lots of other super important information that is going on in the world. So, this is the time that is for you. And as I said in one of the posts, it does feel like Groundhog Day. Does anybody else have that same sort of feeling or sensation? You don't know what day it is. Each day just sort of blurs into the next day. And so it's sort of hard to distinguish, what did I do today? What am I going to do today? So we're going to talk about some specific things that you can do today so it does not feel like Groundhog Day. So this is a unique, special day with maybe a different to-do list and some new things to think about. So hope everybody is doing well. Hope everyone is safe and healthy in your world. And we are going to dive in. And we're going to start off each one with some wins, some good news, anything that you want to share, whether it is around gratitude, whether it is around some sort of positivity, something going on in your community that you want to share, something that you heard on the news. Let's start with just some good news. And, just to let all of you know, Pam is not going to be on the call today. She is taking a class to get another certification. And we've talked about that on this podcast, is that this is a great time for your own personal and professional growth and development, to learn new things, to get new certifications, to add more tools to your toolbox. And so that is what Pam is doing right now. So we practice what we preach over here at On Point. So would anybody, because now this is going to be very interactive, and because I can't, man the chat room and talk at the same time. So clearly that's going to be where my growth and improvement comes, to multitask. So unmute yourself. Any good news that anybody wants to share? What's going on? Anybody?
I'll jump in. Good morning.
Good morning.
I appreciate the guidance that I've gained from following you on this. And what the good news is from that is the message and lesson of staying present and then being flexible and just riding it out for a couple of weeks. And I heard back from my top dream job, hopefully. And she's going through a crazy time at the company, but she provided me with information, and it was really nice to hear back. And she gave me more than you would get. She didn't say a whole lot. It was 4 sentences, but it was enough to keep me engaged and encouraged, and that we'll reconnect when this turns for their company. She's got a very full plate right now, and they do have a position. So she revealed that. And so it helps me focus on what I've started my learning binge. But it gives me a little bit more focus of what to go after now, knowing that what the position is. I don't know exactly what the description is, but it's nice to have that. So it was really fun to hear it in the midst of everything else.
Well, first of all, congratulations, and thanks for sharing that good news. And I think it's a great example of, just what a little bit of focus can do, and what just a few droplets of hope can do to get us sort of through this time, in terms of getting kind of re-energized, and to gain some clarity and some perspective, and to really start maybe kind of honing in on some things. I mean, oftentimes we think that it has to sort of be kind of this super mapped out master plan, and it doesn't. Just a little glimmer can provide a lot in all of those areas. So congratulations, and I hope you will continue to to keep us posted. So that is super good news.
Yeah.
Anybody else have some good news you want to share before we move on? Because this actually ties into sort of one of the first sort of tips and takeaways that we are going to talk about today. And because I will say this is one of the things that I have spent the vast majority of my time lately on with my clients. And oftentimes as coaches, we talk about how to master your mindset. And right now, I think what is more realistic is about how to manage your mindset. We may not quite be at that mastery level right now. And one of the things that we talked about in the first podcast is kind of redefining success. And I think one of what's important when it comes to that, redefining what all of this looks like is we're in the management phase. We may not be in that mastery phase. And whereas before, one of the things that has been sort of a priority in so many of my coaching sessions is, things that sort of used to kind of feel like a luxury or a hobby or, some of those things that, great part of, your daily routine, whether it is exercise, whether it is meditation, whether it is a walk, whether it's spending time with your pets, if that makes you happy, all of those things that sort of bring you joy, all of those things that fill your bucket, all of those things that bring you energy, that bring you peace, that help to sort of center you, to help you, as Shara said, to keep you feeling present. It is no longer a luxury anymore. My feeling is that it should be a priority, just like it is in terms of cleaning your house, washing your hands for 20 seconds, staying indoors and doing our part. I mean, all of this is so mandatory because our mindsets right now are going to be one of the greatest challenges. And how do we stay hopeful? How do we stay present? How do we stay, engaged and optimistic and all of those things? And I may be the only one on the call today that is actually living in Denver, but we just got the news last night that our shelter in place has been extended officially through the end of the month. That's 3 more weeks. And so maybe where the first reaction is, 3 more long weeks. That is at least 21 more Groundhog Days in my future. And what that does to your mindset is oftentimes not positive. And believe me, I wish that I was one of those kind of just naturally, just super bubbly, optimistic, glasses half full all the time, regardless of the situation or the scenario. But I'm not. I'm not one of those people. I actually have to work at my mindset and managing my mindset and having some perspective and, maybe sort of playing some mental games. And because that's what we need to do right now. That's what managing our mindset is about. And so one of the things that I will just share with you when I was working on this podcast, and this really hit home for me, and the timing of all of it. So does anyone here also watch 60 Minutes religiously every Sunday night? I remember as a little girl, and Sunday nights were big family nights and with my grandparents. We'd have Sunday night dinners. And they would always watch 60 Minutes. That's what would be on. And I remember thinking, oh, that's an old person show. And so here I am. Now I watch it every Sunday night. And yes, my kids say that's an old person show. But this Sunday night, they did a story about the Shoah Foundation, which is a foundation that Steven Spielberg created to capture and catalog testimonials and stories from the remaining Holocaust survivors. And what they were saying was they did all these videos. And so, it was fascinating in terms of technology because the idea was very similar to this format, this Zoom format that we are all becoming so accustomed to, is they created an algorithm that you could actually, because it's hours and hours and hours and days of video testimonials, that you can actually sit down and have a conversation with a Holocaust survivor that has potentially passed away. So you can ask a question and then the algorithm gives you the answer. And so they were showing how this was going to be super helpful and all of that. And one of the examples that they used, and one of the interviews that they were conducting virtually like this, even though the gentleman had already passed away a couple of years ago, and he was telling the story of how he survived the Holocaust. And his story was not about being in the camps. He was 9 years old, and the way that he survived World War II was a neighbor kept him hidden in an attic for 2 years. Similar to sort of the Anne Frank story, but a little different. So the Anne Frank story, she stayed in the attic and she had her family and all of that. This gentleman, when he was 9 years old, lived in an attic by himself for 2 years. And he had human contact once a day when his neighbors would bring him food. And I thought to myself, this is talking about like managing your mindset. And I'm thinking to myself, if this individual can keep himself occupied, alive, positive, motivated, hopeful for 2 years by himself in silence, for that long and come out the other side, I thought, I can definitely live in my house with all of the amenities that I have for the next 3 weeks or for however long this takes. So my suggestion to you is find whatever works for you in terms of managing your mindset. What keeps you hopeful? What keeps you positive? What keeps you connected? What keeps you, focused and thinking about the future in a hopeful and positive way. So manage your mindset. And the last thing I will say about this is that you may have to tweak it. So what worked for you yesterday or last week, it may not work the same way this week or today. So keep changing it up, but make it a priority. So manage your mindset. Number 2 is to keep communicating. I cannot emphasize this enough. So, when all of this kind of first started, and there was that first wave of when they were sending everybody home and to work remotely, and then the shelter-in-place orders came in, and now we are all at home. There was this first wave of everybody was communicating and getting on Zoom and reaching out via email or text or phone, and how are you, and what's going on in your world. And I just cannot emphasize this enough, that especially now more than ever, it's not a one and done. You cannot communicate enough right now. So the example that Shar gave in terms of, even if it is just, check-ins more frequently, weekly, daily with some people, just thinking about you and just want to make sure that you're okay. Do you need anything? Making sure that you are reevaluating your communication cadence with your boss. So there was a flurry of communication in the beginning. Just make sure that it has not dropped off. Okay? Just make sure that you are constantly in communication. You are initiating all of that communication, because as we talked about before, it's not just communication, it's also around visibility. Make sure your boss knows often what you are doing. Make sure, if you are in a leadership position, that you are engaged with your team. I mean, I've spent a lot of time coaching my clients right now that, sort of in pre-coronavirus, maybe it was a weekly all hands on deck meeting, but now it is those daily huddles that have been so much more effective. 20 minutes with your team, with your group is really sort of what is making an enormous difference. And that may change when we all sort of figure out what our new normal is. And if you are a contractor or a consultant, keep communicating with your clients, okay, almost on a daily basis or with some regularity. Just because you checked in a few weeks ago to see how everyone is doing doesn't mean that you can't keep circling back. Have that list ready that you keep checking in. How are you? Is there anything that I can do? Is there anything that you need? Be a constant resource for critical people. So whereas sometimes with that temptation is to sort of hunker down and to isolate, this is just a reminder to keep communicating, keep reaching out. Not only is it going to pay off today, and Shar, that was a fantastic example, because timing is everything. You never know when you're going to reach out to somebody, and it is going to be exactly what they need to hear at exactly the right time, and you're going to finally get a response that is going to propel you in a particular direction. So this is also the time too, when I say keep communicating, this is also where we can kind of relax or loosen some of the expectations in terms of that response or that response time. And this is about giving without necessarily expecting to receive, okay? And yes, the rules will change again. But right now, understanding we don't know what's going on in somebody else's world, in somebody else's day. And you may just make their day with a kind note, with an update, with an offer. Okay? And I'm a big believer in karma, and it will come back in some way and in some form. So, number 2, keep communicating over and over and over. Number 3, this is all about practicing your pitch. And everybody's favorite, this is your elevator pitch. So whether you are working from home, whether you are, working for yourself, whether you are looking for work, all 3 categories, I'm a big believer that we should always have a polished elevator pitch. So what is an elevator pitch? And why should I be focused on it now? First of all, everybody should have one. You never know when you are going to meet someone, literally in an elevator. I tell this story all the time because this is probably one of the things I spend the most amount of time with in terms of clients and talking about, and when I'm on stage, because nobody ever wants to think about their elevator pitch. And it is that visual, literally, where you are in an elevator with, whether it's the hiring manager of your dream job, whether it is the CEO of your company that you rarely ever have any FaceTime with, or it is the top potential client that you would love to land. All of those scenarios, right? Think about it this way. You're in an elevator. What would you say to that individual from the top floor to by the time you hit the lobby and those doors open? What would you say to that person that at the very least you are going to entice them enough to want to continue the conversation? That's a pitch, okay? And so thinking about it right now, I would have this sort of the top of your list if you do not have your pitch ready. So I break it down to a 4-step, foolproof formula for the perfect elevator pitch. And before I launch into that, the example that I always gave is that, everybody always says, does that ever really happen? Are you ever really in an elevator with anybody that you're going to need to impress? And it has happened more times than you can imagine. And in particular, a client of mine, she worked remotely. She was never in the main office, and she was there for a meeting, and the CEO was in the elevator with her. They had never met. And it was the opportunity for her to actually launch into this pitch and introduce herself and make an impression. And most importantly, a lasting impression, because we should always be in the mindset of self-promotion. Are you prepared to optimize each and every opportunity that presents itself to you, including being in an elevator with a key decision maker, with someone of influence, with a key connection that you want to make? Would you be ready? Or would you walk out of that elevator after the doors close and kicking yourself? Like, oh, I wish I had said this. I wish I had said that. No, that's the worst. So, 4-step, foolproof formula for the perfect elevator pitch. You ready? All right. The first step is who you are. That's literally your name. Okay? First and last. Because if you can imagine, most people get so anxious and so excited to launch into their pitch, they forget to say their name. And if they remember nothing else about you, at the very least, you want them to remember your name. Also, think about it this way. The gift of your name is one of the greatest gifts that you can give someone. Don't ever assume somebody remembers your name. I am horrible with names. And anytime somebody comes up to me and sort of reintroduces themselves, let's say, Amy, so wonderful to see you again, Susan Jones. I am eternally grateful for somebody to reintroduce themselves that way. Now I'll make a mental note that that person just gave me a great gift. So first step, who you are. First and last name. Second step is what you do. This is your profession, your area of expertise, your industry, how long you have done it, some context by which that person can start creating a mental picture of what you do, okay? And this is where, when we talked about before, some of those transferable kind of skills and descriptions can come in handy. So, great example. So I had a client who was the CFO. So when we all think of a CFO, we think of a chief financial officer, correct? Well, not in her case. Her CFO was the chief fun officer of her company. Now, I know today, so this is where everybody's getting super creative with titles and with acronyms, but if she introduced herself as a CFO, somebody is going to connect the dots, create a picture, and create a story around what they think a CFO is. They're thinking she's in the financial field. That story's going in a completely different direction than in the fun area. So her role was actually around employee engagement. And, she was in the HR space. But nobody would know that if she introduced herself as a CFO. So think about that in terms of how that information is going to be digested or dissected in somebody else's brain. So who you are, what you do. Third step is why you do it better than anyone else. Okay, this is your why. This is sort of that backstory. So if you think about a pitch in terms of your opportunity to sell yourself, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. What is the passion that you bring? What is the story? What are those things that you are super proud of? Your why is that combination of sort of your passion, your purpose, maybe what got you into that field in the first place. That's the story. It also maybe includes your superpowers, meaning your strengths, like what are you really good at? And what is the the reward that you receive by doing it. Okay? What keeps you going every day? What gets you up every morning? So you get to do that one thing over and over and over, and you are so grateful and you can't wait to do it again tomorrow. Right? That's what people connect to. And then the fourth step is your value proposition. So how is what you do and why you do it so well, how does that bring value to an organization? So I will use my CFO as an example, okay? Chief Fun Officer. So we'll pretend her name is Susan Jones, Chief Fun Officer, and she does it because, her dream, her passion, she is all about, helping people really sort of realize their full potential and helping organizations, really focus on people. And in terms of development and training and engagement, and that's what she gets to do, and she does it better than anyone else. And then the value proposition, which is really nothing more than the business case that you're making, is that how it positively impacts an organization's bottom line, because that's what we're talking about. So the fact that she is all about people and getting employees engaged, it increases productivity. It reduces turnover. It increases retention. It creates a fleet of raving fans and improves the company's culture, because the employees are so engaged and so happy to be there that they tell all their friends. It increases brand awareness for that organization. So keep in mind, so these 4 steps: who you are, what you do, why you do it better than anyone else, and your value proposition. Rarely, unless you are in a particular sort of forum or arena where somebody literally hands you a microphone and says, okay, Mary, give me your elevator pitch. Understand that this is much more of a dialogue than a monologue, right? It's going to be an exchange. You're going to be having a conversation. But what's important to remember is that you want to know what you are going to say before you need to say it. And I also believe too that there is a huge difference between memorizing something. So I don't want you to think of this so much as a script. So there's a big difference between memorizing something, which sounds rehearsed, it sounds canned, it sounds fake, it sounds scripted, and knowing that this is also really about authenticity. You want to shift from that memorization to that internalization. You want to internalize this information to the point where you could say it at any time, to anyone, at any place. I always say the test is, it's the middle of the night test. If somebody woke you up in the middle of the night and said, Erica, what's your elevator pitch? You should be able, in your delirium, in your half asleep stupor, to be able to launch into your pitch. Like, that's the level of internalization that I want you to sort of absorb this information. So then it just flows naturally. You can change it up. Maybe you have a few different versions, depending on who you're talking to. This is where then you can customize on the fly, right? So 4 steps to the foolproof elevator pitch. And this is a perfect time, whether it is, by the time you, re-enter the workplace, by the time, you're reaching out to new clients, by the time we're all sort of seeing each other face to face, or Zoom lasts a little longer. I promise you, you're going to use your pitch, and you should be using your pitch more often than you realize. Good? All right. So we're going to be practicing that. And again, my offer still stands, always. If you ever want to reach out to me, call me, email me, we can hop on a Zoom, practice your pitch. I'm happy to help you polish it anytime. All right, number 4 is to start thinking and planning ahead. We will be coming through this, okay? And when it comes to sort of driving your career, we're not exactly sure what it may look like the other side. There could be some curves in the road. It's not going to be a straight line. We may not be able to see around all of the corners, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And so I want you to really start thinking strategically, planning ahead. So when the doors do finally open, you can hit the ground running. Okay, thinking and planning ahead. What are you going to need to do to prepare yourself, to prepare your team for that re-entry back into the workplace, back into your office setting? What new challenges are going to exist? What new solutions can you provide? What is that new landscape going to look like? Okay, and what do you need to do to make sure that you completely hit that ground running in a really positive way? You do not want to be caught flat-footed. Similarly, if you work for yourself, okay, and you're used to servicing a certain clientele, well, that certain clientele may or may not be there on the other side, so to speak, or the market may look different. The needs may be completely different. This is where that agility, that adaptability, flexibility, innovation. So really start thinking and planning ahead. And similarly, if you are in transition and you are in the job market, thinking and planning ahead of what is that going to look like? Who is going to be hiring when all of this opens? So keep in mind, during the last recession, what came out of that recession? A lot of the gig economy. That's when Uber started. That's when Airbnb started. You know, all sorts of things. Look, Zoom platform. I think that they were saying that they serviced, you know, maybe, what was the numbers? Like 1 million people a day at best. And now it's like close to 10, 15, 20 million. And so thinking ahead in terms of what kind of changes are on the horizon and how can you fit into that? Because this is about setting yourself up for success when it comes to managing your career in a crisis. Because within every crisis, there is also a ton of opportunity. So are you thinking and planning ahead of what that is going to look like on the horizon? And are you ready to optimize what is in front of you? So think and plan ahead. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Thoughts, comments, questions about anything that we've talked about today or anything going on in your world? Questions? I know I get a lot of emails and I can't necessarily, well, maybe I can. Let's see. Thank you. All right.
Hi, Amy. Good morning. It's Erica.
Hi, Erica. How
Hey.
are you?
I'm doing good. I'm currently furloughed, so making the most of the time.
Okay.
But I was curious if you mentioned online training, and I'm trying to take advantage of the time and just, learn some new skills. And I have one that I already kind of have in my list, but I was wondering if you had a resource of online trainings that you could share, or if you knew of some that were beneficial.
So here's the good news, is that the trainings now are so specific. So I'll make just sort of a general statement and then sort of narrowing it down, then maybe I'll be able to provide some more specific resources. But I would start specifically with thinking about, what do you want to learn? What skill set do you want to acquire or potentially master or improve? And then also thinking about whether it's also a certification potentially, and then where to go and access those resources. So the good news is that, again, so many of these online trainings are getting so specific. And so it really allows you to focus, to hone in on exactly what you want to learn. So that's the good news and bad news. So the good news is that there is just more availability than ever before. The bad news is that it also requires you to do a lot of the heavy lifting on the front end, meaning you have to figure out what it is exactly that you want to learn.
Okay.
But you want to use this time wisely. So do you have something sort of specific in mind? And then maybe I can give you a little direction.
Right now I'm going through an online Excel course just to kind of brush up on that skill.
Okay.
And then beyond that, I was looking at, there's a course that I'm looking at, but it's very pricey. So I was wondering if maybe there was some things online now that people are offering that's more free, but I was looking for something that was more in relation to like building a budget, like for like my hotel kind of scenario. So
Right.
just something that has those kind of resources on, how to and kind of build that knowledge.
Absolutely. And so here's a couple of ways to sort of think about it is that, all right, so if it's in kind of the financial space, okay,
Mhm.
there's a few things that you can do. Certainly there are professional associations out there that target, financial resources and things like that. But also, believe it or not, the government is offering all kinds of courses and training and educational materials. So whether it is the Small Business Association, whether it is the local workforce centers, there are, I think maybe even, because I know they're doing a ton on taxes and finances right now. But I'm sure if you do a little digging, there are those resources that may be at a little better price point, if not free.
Okay.
Does
Okay.
that help?
Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. And, so it's a perfect question because Pam just joined us. And so as I mentioned at the top of the podcast, it's exactly what she's doing. She's getting another certification and getting certified as a team coach, which we all know she doesn't really need the certification, but she's using this time to get the certification. But again, it's super specific and those resources are there. And I will say that if you do a little shopping around, and Erica, the other sort of suggestion that I would offer to you is that if there is a specific program or certification or training that you are really interested in, now is also the time to leverage some negotiation skills. There is nothing wrong with reaching out to them and asking if there's any flexibility
Mm-hmm.
on that price point.
That's a good point. Okay.
So people are being extremely generous and super flexible, and there may be some other options for you. And now more than ever, it does not hurt to ask.
Right. Thank you.
Right? Of course. Absolutely. All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, okay. It's frozen for some reason. So I'm just going to do the recap for this week. We covered 4 tips. Okay. The first one was to manage your mindset. All right. And remember, that management may look different every day, but it should be a focus and it should be a priority. Whatever you need to do for your mental health to, as Shar mentioned in the beginning, it doesn't take much to have just a drop of hope and optimism and positivity. And that can really change the entire trajectory of your day, of your week, and most importantly, of your mindset. So number 1 is to manage your mindset. Number 2 is to keep communicating. Circle back to those people on your list. Check in, get updates, make sure that you are having, constant and regular communication cadence with your boss, with your team, with your clients, with key connections that you are trying to get new work with over and over and over. You cannot communicate too much nowadays. And again, relax the expectations in terms of what you'll receive in return. Everybody's time is a little different right now. So keep communicating, keep reaching out. Number 3, practice your pitch, your elevator pitch. And again, I am here as a resource if you ever want to practice it out loud, because it does come in handy. You need it every day. And now is the perfect time to spend a little time to really practice that elevator pitch. Every day we are promoting ourselves. Every day is an opportunity. And I want to make sure that you are positioned to optimize those opportunities each and every day. It may be a while before we're all in an elevator together, but doesn't mean that we can't be having that same conversation every single day. And then the last tip was to think and plan ahead, right? Start thinking around those corners. Start thinking about those next steps. Start thinking about sort of what that landscape is going to look like and what's going to be changing and what are going to be the new opportunities. So then you can really hit that ground running. Think strategically. Think ahead creatively. What are going to be the new challenges? And then provide some new solutions. Okay? 4 tips for today. Thank you all so much for joining me this morning. I hope everyone continues to stay safe, healthy, and I will see all of you next Tuesday at same time, 10 a.m. Eastern time, and we'll do part 6. And until then, Pam is going to be on Thursday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So Pam, do you want to say hello and talk a little bit about what they can expect on Thursday?
Good morning, everyone. Leading through a crisis, whether that's leading yourself, teams, and organizations. It's my topic is usually around resilience and well-being. I haven't really honed in on the exact focus yet because, as we know, I like to be nimble and flexible because things are changing by the day. And so I will put out exactly what our focus is tomorrow.
Exactly. And similar to what I shared with you today, so much of what Pam and I do is we use our real life experiences, what we are coaching our clients on every single day, the conversations that we are having with our clients. We want to make sure this information is as current and as relevant for you. So, we make sure that we are bringing you exactly what it is that we are dealing with, what we are coaching, and what we are also, helping everybody else with. So thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day. I will see you Thursday morning with Pam, and then I'll see you next Tuesday. And thank you, and good luck to everybody. Bye.